now still evaluating the midterm results of the current administration. 80% of Nigeria's public policy challenges can be solved through stronger institutions and clearer frameworks. That's according to Vice President Kashim Shettima. Well, he made the remark at the State House in Abuja during the presentation of the draft National Public Policy Development and Management Framework. The Vice President described the policy document as long overdue and says policies must be well communicated, data-driven, and enforced with real consequences for non-performance. Meanwhile, the Special Advisor to the President on Policy and Coordination, Hadiza Bala Usman, said the framework was developed to address duplication and poor coordination across government agencies.
Our citizens must see that our reforms and policies are for the overall good of the nation. They must imbibe this, respect these policies, and accept it for the overall good of our nation. In this regard, communication to the Nigerian citizenry is very key. We must imbibe this in our e-governance program, and digitization provides data, transparency, and ease of monitoring and enforcement.
Yes, our meeting today with the Vice President was to present to him the draft public policy framework for his input. The Office of the Special Advisor on Policy and Coordination has been working on developing the framework, which is in line with the renewed hope agenda of Mr. President. The President had made it clear to us that there's a need for us to provide clarity on how the government can improve on its performance. One of the key areas we recognize is the need to have a public policy framework that will guide the way government conceptualizes policies, the way government develops policies and implement them.
Joining us now is Chijoke, Ekechukwu, an economist, still discussing Nigeria's economy and, of course, the ballooning debt profile. Thank you for joining us on Newsnight.
Thank you very much.
I believe you listened to the finance minister there trying to, explain away the position of the economy. He says the economy is, more or less stable now, echoing what the president said in his speech today. And of course, on the issue of the debt, ballooning debt, you heard his explanation that it's not, $25 billion debt within the space of 1 or 2 years, but it's a, medium-term expenditure framework and all of that. But first of all, what do you make of his, explanations this evening, his intervention?
Yeah, I've actually listened to the finance minister respond to questions like this, especially at the NESG gathering. He appeared to have said the same kind of explanation, to explain this. But I see that because I look at it from the point of view of a country having a budget. If we have a budget and we have a deficit, we know that the deficit of our budget is about 13 trillion naira. So the question I usually ask when I see this kind of borrowing is, were these things planned, part of the plan of the budget? To the extent that, yes, I know we have about 13 trillion deficit. Are they part of it? Of course, they are supposed to be funded with loans in related terms. Are they part of those deficits that should be funded, or have we gone beyond the deficit? And of course, talking about that also, I usually will imagine that some of the plans of the budget are not just there yet. For example, we planned that our oil price was going to be about $85 per barrel. Today it's about 65 or thereabout. Now that is creating extra deficit. That is going to create about $20 deficit also. The price of the capacity production that we are going to produce as benchmarked about 1 point something million barrels. We're still hovering around 2.1 or thereabout. But we're still hovering around 1.5 million barrels. These are also things that are going to create some gaps in the budget. So when you see those gaps created, coupled with the deficit that's already existing, you are going to be seeing this kind of borrowing. However, the question also to be asked is, to what extent have we been able to fund the deficit through the borrowing? Right. How much more is left? These are some of the information we expect to hear to know whether we have even borrowed far beyond the deficit we're having or beyond or that. So if we don't have that kind of information, then it's difficult for us to even assess what is being borrowed and for what. Have these things been budgeted for? Because usually I see that the session of budget goes, and then the next things we're going to be discussing will not relate to the budget or to the deficit or to the borrowing and things like that. So we need to move with it. And that way we can understand what the borrowings are for. Have they funded the deficit? How much more do we need to fund? These are questions we need to be asking all the time. And they need to also be explained to Nigerians.
Interesting.
Yes.
So
Yes.
you're not as optimistic as the minister when he says that the borrowing is for investment in long-term projects such as power. I mean, he highlighted some of those project bridges and all of that when it comes to borrowing. But are you as optimistic as he is when he says that the reforms are yielding fruits, just like the president has reiterated today, and particularly for the average Nigerians who hear all of these figures, hear the applause, but they can't feel it in their pockets and when they go to the markets?
Okay, as an economist, I look at figures, I look at narratives, and I look at them, I compare them from between what they used to be and what they are today. I see that the reforms are yielding fruits, just like you said.
Okay.
When you take them one after the other, there are things, when they came into power, recall that we had almost a net foreign reserve of about $4 billion. Today, that figure has risen to up to 23 or thereabouts billion dollars. We also look at situations where a lot of obligations couldn't be paid by the country, by CBN, and what we hear is that most of those obligations have been fulfilled and paid. So when you keep doing that and you're still seeing the figures looking better, what is going to create for us is that kind of credibility as a country. Our rating is going to start rising. Investors are going to start looking at us as serious people to come to. This is a country that every investor should be looking at. And so if we continue to have our figures looking better, improving, I can tell you, and I usually will say, Rome was not built in a day. These reforms are going to have their results coming and playing out in the pockets of Nigerians in the future, in the long run. But right now, because they are just like somebody building a house, you're laying foundation, nobody's going to see what you're doing. Right. You're putting and laying foundation. Once you come up to a particular point, people will say, oh, how did this happen?
So you believe that the right foundations are being built now? And when you add to, the Minister of Finance has been quoted as saying, look, we're focusing on revenue mobilization rather than concessional, funding. And all of that, targeting 7% GDP growth per annum. So the foundation is being laid with the reforms, and Nigerians should begin to see, positive results.
Yeah.
Sooner than later.
Yeah, obviously, with our growth rate that we have experienced at the last quarter of last year, you could see that there is hope that this economy was growing at a rate of about 2.5, 2.4, now heading to 3 point, even above the projection made by World Bank and IMF. So that's to tell you that something positive is happening. But I can tell you, the reason why the average Nigerian is not feeling this is because both the savings and the revenues are to build the government, not the people. But if it is a government that has enough fiscal discipline, you see that all the things that we're generating and we're saving from here will come back to the people in terms of good education, in good health care, and a lot of other things. But do we have that fiscal discipline yet? Until we have it, then we'll be having benefits from some of the savings that have taken place from the reforms done.
Okay, if you could advise the president in 20 seconds on his economic reforms and direction, what would he be? What he has not done yet?
Okay. The first thing that will impress
in 20 seconds.
In 20 seconds. The first thing that will impress all Nigerians is the fact that there must be fiscal discipline. Okay. They should show Nigerians how to save money and not how to
profligate.
Yes.
All right.
That's right.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you very much.
Mr. Chijoke Ekechukwu is an economist joining us tonight on News.